Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Planetarium show and night two of our Dark Sky Caravan. So I'm Jessica. I am the director of the Planetarium. We've got quite a few people with us tonight. Two faces you probably recognize if you've been to any of our streams before, who are two of our students that work in the Planetarium, and I will let them say hi. We'll start with Eli.
Hi, I'm a physics undergraduate student at UMD.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm a physics graduate student at UMD.
And then we have a special guest tonight, Emma from Chickawauk Museum and Nature Center, where I have already forgotten what your title is.
Yes. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm the Campus Operations Assistant at Chickawauk Museum and Nature Center.
There we go. And she's actually going to be our first kind of speaker tonight, talking about dark sky status. And then after that, we'll talk about kind of some of the cool things that we can see up in the dark nighttime sky. Now, as always, if you have any questions throughout the show tonight, feel free to leave them down in the comments. We'll be keeping an eye on that, and we'll try and answer them as they come up. Or if we can't get to them right away, we'll also have time after each of our little talk to answer questions as well. So with that, Emma, I will turn it over to you.
Alrighty, just give me 1 second here to share my screen with you all. There we go. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about protecting the dark sky and how we take care of that here at Chickawauk. So again, my name is Emma. I am the Campus Operations Assistant at Chickawauk. So here's a nice picture of Chickawauk. This is our museum right here, and you can see a little bit of the tip of our nature center. And we sit right here on Lake Saginaw. It's the deepest inland lake in Minnesota, so that's deepest lake minus Lake Superior. We are located 55 miles up the Gunflint Trail. So it's about an hour away from Grand Marais. And then it's about 3 hours from Duluth in the Planetarium. So you come up the North Shore and pop on in. So we are a little bit of a journey, but we do daily programming. So we're open every day from 10 to 5. We bring the natural and cultural history of the Gunflint Trail and the Boundary Waters area to a bunch of visitors. And why the Boundary Waters and Chickawauk itself is interested partly in the dark sky is because the Boundary Waters Wilderness Area is an official dark sky sanctuary. So there's this organization called the International Dark Sky Association. They were founded in 2001. And their job is to encourage communities, parks, protected areas, natural areas to preserve and protect dark skies. They do that through policy and public education and a bunch of really neat activities that they do. So I highly suggest anyone that's interested in the dark sky to take a look at their website. So the Boundary Waters in 2020, so just this last year, officially became a dark sky sanctuary. So the IDA actually sets out different types of dark sky land. So there's dark sky communities, dark sky sanctuaries, dark sky reserves, and each of them have a different component of a dark sky. So in the world, there's only 14 designated dark sky sanctuaries, and 6 of them are here in the US, and Minnesota is lucky to have one of them here. So a sanctuary is a little bit different. It's probably one of like the darkest sky out of their different rankings that you can have. The area, so the wilderness area, and it was the application went through the U.S. Forest Service, did the application and decided to do a reserve because there's dark sky parks or reserves, but a sanctuary is a little more remote and has a little less threats to the dark sky than other places do. So if you think about it, where I'm at, I mentioned the closest town is an hour away from here. So we are pretty lucky to have very low lights. Most lights that I see around the day are just from my bedroom window. So if you are on our Facebook at the moment, if you want to comment me, if you've ever seen the Milky Way, if you're just listening, I want you to think to a time if you have seen the Milky Way, and think, did you have to go somewhere to see that Milky Way? Was that just outside of your front door? Did you have to go into a field? Where did you have to go to the planetarium to see the Milky Way? What kind of experience do you have with that? And I'm asking this question, and I want you to reflect on this, because in the United States, only 99% of people get to experience natural light in the evening. So that is light from just the moon and the stars, not interfered from street lights, house lights, car lights, and those sorts of things. And specifically the Milky Way, only 80% of people cannot see the Milky Way where they live. And that is in the world. So a number of people where they live aren't able to see the Milky Way, and you might be one of them. And that in the US is about 265 million in the people that aren't able to see the Milky Way even on a clear night. And that is due to light pollution. So light pollution, the definition is just an inappropriate or excessive use of man-made light. Now, there's actually different types of light pollution. So there's glare, which is bright lights that might impair your eyesight. So glare, I like to think of definitely car glares. Everyone's familiar with that when you're looking out the window and a car's coming on, and it's just bright and excessive. Or some like neon light billboards, kind of like a McDonald's sign, or just a highway sign that is extra bright. Then there's light trespass, which is light intended for one purpose, but impacts adjacent places or people. This one, I think a lot of the street light across from your house. I know at my parents' house, the bedroom that I stay in there, the street lamp impedes my bedroom window. So that light is there for the road and to help drivers, but ends up trespassing my space into my bedroom and lighting my bedroom. Then there's sky glow. So this light pollution just lights up the sky over cities or brightly lit businesses. So that's if you ever like go out and you can see the little haze of the city nearby, or you can tell when you're out maybe in the suburbs more, you can see where more of the business district is or more of the population is. Or a nice good example too is if you're ever out on the lake and you turn at night and turn back in, you can see Duluth in the city or any city along the lake too with all of their lights. So why do we care? There's a number of issues that light pollution brings to humans and animals, plants, that can really leave kind of a negative impact. So for us, one thing is we don't get to see as many celestial sights. We don't get to see that Milky Way. We don't get access to as many constellations and stars. And I'm sure that my co-presenters can tell you how much observing through telescopes and how much it impacts an astronomer's light pollution can impact an astronomer's work and fields, and you have to be very critical and think about where you're going to place an observatory or a telescope for research and that sorts of thing. But it also can affect everyday people, or everyone, I should say, every day. So the biggest impact for humans is through our circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythm is this balance of hormones that you go through in a 24-hour period. And it basically tells you when to release this hormone called melatonin. Most people are familiar with melatonin as a supplement that you can take for helping you sleep. But it's actually something that your body can naturally produce. And so excessive light can interrupt this natural rhythm. So your body adjusts, or your body tells itself when to release this melatonin to help you start calming down and falling asleep based on lighting. And so when it starts getting dark outside, your body starts creating more melatonin to help you relax. And then as it starts to get light, that melatonin release will lift up. And so with artificial light, so that could be inside your house or outside of your house, it can disrupt that function. You will still create melatonin, you'll still have a circadian rhythm, but it might change the times, it might change the duration of when the melatonin is released or not released. And all of this can lead to increases in obesity, depression, sleep orders, diabetes, and there's even been studies showing that light pollution can impact your chances of getting cancer. So there's signs of increased prostate cancer and breast cancer. So there's a lot of actual diseases and human impacts that light pollution can have. Another big factor, it affects many animals, but birds are very much affected to light pollution. So many birds are more attracted to light. And so a lot of migrating birds find cities to be a lot more attractive to roost and rest. And they can actually lead to a lot of accidental collisions and deaths with buildings for those birds. There's also a number of seabirds. So my favorite animal in the whole world is the puffin. And so these birds act very similar to sea turtles. So puffins will come inland and lay their eggs in coastal regions. When the eggs hatch, those small puffin birds are attracted to the ocean through the moonlight. So in a natural setting where there's no artificial light, the ocean's going to shine brighter than the land because the moonlight or starlight, any natural light is going to reflect off the ocean more than it will reflect off the land. So that bird knows which direction the ocean is where it needs to go based on the amount of light. Now, if you put in artificial light, man-made light, that bird is going to be more attracted to the brighter light, which is most likely going to be the man-made light. And so then that brings the birds inland, not where they're supposed to, increases their chance of being hit by cars, being eaten by land predators, and those sorts of things. Let's see, so ecosystems are also affected by light pollution. And I want to talk a little bit specifically about this plant that you see in the image here. This is called a cabbage thistle. And some scientists did an experiment with cabbage thistle. They're found in meadows and prairies, and they set LED lights on certain plants of this cabbage thistle and watched the number of insect visits and pollinators that came to the thistle that had these LED lights and the thistles that did not. So in the LED meadows, the ones that were lit, 62% fewer insects visited those plants versus the ones that did not have that artificial light. 29% less pollinators visited this plant. And if you know anything about plant biology, you know that a lot of pollinators are really important. So a thistle is not able to pollinate itself or use wind or water. It is in need of an animal to pollinate to reproduce seeds and fruit. And so these plants that were covered in light made 13% less fruit, so 13% less seeds than the plants that were not covered. So this creates sort of a problem if these plants did this for generation onto generation. With less fruit, you're going to have less plants that come up the next year, which is also going to create less food for the pollinators. And the pollinators then are going to create less food for larger animals. And then you've got this chain reaction. And also with less pollinators, you have less pollinators to pollinate these plants. And then you get less plants. And so it's kind of just a downward spiral if we keep that system working in that way. So what can we do about light pollution? There's a bunch of ways that you can at home nice and easily do. One really easy thing is to turn off your outside lights when you're home. You know, we're not saying never use lights. I always keep a light on when I'm gone because I can't find my way back home. It's too dark without those lights. But when you're home and alone, you are able to do that. Another really amazing, quick, easy fix is to have a light that faces downward on the outside. So if a light faces up, all that light is going up into the sky and spreading its way. But if you have a light that faces downward, that light will then go strictly to the ground and have less of an area to expand. You can also talk to your community, your homeowners association, your town, and advocate for light ordinances. So different cities do have rules and regulations of how you can use light and what kind of lighting the street lights are on. So you can go to city hall meetings and just really advocate for that. I had mentioned the International Dark Sky Association before. They have really wonderful resources on their website of how to interact and how to do that and talking to people in your community about changing their lights. They also have a great way. They've got their international dark sky communities and towns. And so where you live could become one of those as well. And so it's kind of a nice incentive to change some of your ordinances and lighting is, to have that recognition and be public and be able to brag about that. I think is something really important. Another thing is this really fun app that I've started using. It's called Loss of Night. And so what this does is each evening it uses your GPS location to locate a star. And it will give you a little red circle with an arrow, and it with your location, you'll search around for the star, and on your screen, it'll tell you if you found the star, and you can look up into the night and see if you can see that star in your sky, and input the data whether you can or cannot see the star, whether that's due to clouds or trees or homes, or if it has anything to do with light pollution in your area. All that data is on the phone. And that gets submitted and is usable then by scientists throughout the world to look at and study light pollution. And so that's a way that you can help allow people to understand locations and where light pollution is and what light pollution might be affecting in the world. So with that is the end of my portion. Again, my name is Emma and I work for the Chickawauk Museum and Nature Center. Please feel free to ask any more questions. Otherwise, I think I will head it back to Jessica here.
Very cool. I want you to afterwards send me the information about that app, because I
Yes.
want to make sure that we are spreading that information, because that is really awesome.
Yeah, I just found that a month ago or so, and it's really great. I sometimes struggle with using it here just with having GPS location, but anyone that lives in Duluth or the Twin Cities will be perfectly fine using it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to start giving information about that out, because I really like that. Also, I just want to do it.
Yeah,
That would be
no, it's
cool.
fun. It's really fun. It's really fun.
So I'm not seeing any questions right away. Sorry, I'm looking down to check my phone.
Yes.
To look for questions. But I know that there are some common things that come up when we talk about minimizing light pollution. And I know one of those things that people always worry about is, safety. They say, we have lights, street lights, lights out in parking lots and things for safety. And I think it's important to say that, obviously we're not saying we don't want there to be safety lights or things like that.
Yes.
But there are things that you can do to minimize, like you were talking about. Parking lot lights do face down, but a lot of them have a very wide angle that they cover, which makes kind of more light pollution. And so there are covers that you can put that actually make it more concentrated downward and less upward. There's also the color of the light. Warmer lights are a lot better at kind of not preventing, but lessening the effect of light pollution than the really bright white blue lights. And they're also a lot better for your eyes, because the red lights let your eyes stay dark adapted, which means you'll be able to see things in the shadows that you can't see when you're being blinded by super bright white light, because your eyes aren't dark adapted in that point. And that's why shadows look so much darker and why you can't see anything. But with the warmer lights, that's not the case. So there's a lot of things like that it's just, frankly, people haven't experienced what good dark adaptable lighting is, and so they don't necessarily understand how we are still keeping things safe. And yeah, I mean, as a woman, I obviously want lights in a parking lot as I'm walking through at night.
Yes.
I mean, it just the truth, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know, Lindsay, you do a lot with this as well, kind of. I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add.
And you talked about this in your presentation, but just again, another huge misconception people get about light pollution is that it's just about seeing the stars in the Milky Way. But as she was saying, it affects humans, it affects animals, and all of these other things. So as much as we like looking at the Milky Way and the night sky, it's not just about that.
Yeah. And there is actually an organization here, I think based in Duluth, that is working. They previously went by a Starry Skies Lake Superior, but I believe they have recently changed their name to Starry Skies North. But they're basically the local chapter of the International Dark Sky Association that works to help lessen light pollution. I know that they're working, I believe, last I heard, and it's been a little while, Grand Marais is working to become a dark sky city, which doesn't mean having no lights. That means taking the steps to lessen light pollution through the steps that we talked about, shielding lights, warmer lights, that sort of thing. And they're helping with that as well. And I believe they're pushing it in Duluth too. I haven't heard much about that, but we should maybe get more involved in that. I'm realizing.
Yes.
We do so much. Yeah, but that's awesome. And I actually had completely forgotten that Boundary Waters was officially Because I know,
Yes, it's a new.
yeah, I knew Voyagers just became one as
Yes.
well. They're a sanctuary too, I believe.
I think they're a reserve.
They're a reserve?
They're
Okay.
park, because they're
Right.
an official park. So the reserves tend to go to more of the national park sort of system, but the boundary waters, because we have multi-agencies
Right.
involved in it, because we also connect to with the Quetico Provincial Park in Canada, is also kind of incorporated in that.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of good efforts to make sure we're preserving, because we talked about this last night, how we have kind of the only really, really dark skies on the east, kind of east of the Mississippi. You don't find dark skies like this anywhere else unless you go out west. So, like, we're really trying to push to preserve that for a lot of reasons, but also, advocating for our health and safety and those of the ecosystems that we are affecting. It looks like someone posted the link to Starry Skies, so that's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Perfect.
Yeah, so thank you, Emma. That was amazing. I actually learned something new. I didn't know about the thistle. Was it the thistle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
So.
That makes a lot of sense, though. Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, not cool, bad, but cool to learn something new.
Cool
I always
science.
appreciate. Yes, cool science. All right. So for the rest of tonight, we kind of wanted to lead into our star parties that are happening the rest of the week and take a look at some of the things that you can see in really, really dark skies. And so I don't normally do this, but I'm just going to share screen so that Emma can see stuff too, because I don't think you have the Facebook pulled up, do you? Oh, you're muted. All right, I'm going to share screen so that you can see stuff too, which means the Zoom is going to go away for just a second. Let me get over here very quickly, navigating. There we go. So we saw yesterday, we talked about some of the things that we can use to kind of enjoy the night sky, and we looked a little bit about some of the things that we can see. Things like stars and planets and the Milky Way, and a lot of that was kind of naked eye, things that we can see with our unaided eye. But there are a lot of other things up in the sky. Some you can see with your naked eye if you have super, super dark skies. Some you do need kind of a pair of binoculars or a telescope, which we talked about that last night as well. If you weren't with us last night, that has been saved on our kind of the videos tab of our Facebook page, so you can go check that out and see what we're talking about. So I wanted to touch on some of the other things that we can see. Let me minimize this. Oops. No, I want me, and it's showing Eli. So I think I need to do that. Okay. Did I unpin it for you guys, or? I think that works.
I'm waiting for the stream to catch up. Okay, yeah, that looks good.
Okay, cool. Sorry, you're going to have the Zoom bar, but I want Emma to see everything. So one of the things that we can see up in our night sky are actually what we call star clusters. Because most stars are born in or created in groups, because they come out of these big gas clouds. Pieces of the gas cloud kind of collapse and condense together to form stars, and you get a lot of that happening at around the same time. So you get a lot of stars being created kind of together in groups, and those groups of stars are what we call star clusters. And it turns out that there are two main types of star clusters. The first one, the one we're looking at right now, is an open star cluster. So these tend to have fewer stars, so hundreds to a few thousand stars. They tend to be more kind of spaced out, so they're kind of bigger, looser groups. And they also don't tend to last for very long because they're fewer stars and they're spread more apart. It's easier for those stars to kind of get pulled away from each other. And so the group tends to kind of pull apart and dissipate, and the stars are no longer associated with each other. So the most famous open star cluster I think that most people would know about is the Pleiades. This is found up in our winter sky, so not something that we would be able to see this week, but it is one of those things that you can see with your naked eye. And in fact, one of the very, very few deep sky object or things outside of our solar system that you can see pretty easily, even in some light pollution. The Pleiades is very bright. I've been able to see it easily from here in Duluth. I don't know about down in the cities. I don't know if Lindsay or Eli, you want to chime in on that?
In the suburbs, definitely. I don't know about right in the downtown areas, though.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the other type of star cluster are globular star clusters. And these get their name because of, well, you can see what it looks like. It's a giant glob of stars. These have many, 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 many more stars than the open clusters. We're talking, hundreds of thousands of stars, and they're much more tightly packed together. And you can see they're much more tightly packed together in the center. And then as you move outward, you see kind of they're a little bit more spread out. So it's like a really dense, tight center, and then the density kind of lessens as you go out. This one in particular is what we call M2. So it doesn't have a fancy name, just a catalog name, NGC 7089. Not all objects have awesome names. And this is one that is up mostly in the spring. It's found in the constellation of Aquarius. Or no, that's fall. Lindsay, I haven't done constellations in so long. Because Capricorn, that's fall, right? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's the creepy mouth, and that's around Halloween. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Eli, you're my trick to remembering this now.
Yeah, terrifying. Absolutely horrible.
he thinks
it's like it's truly unsettling if you find yourself, especially if you're alone in the planetarium, which happens to me not infrequently, and you're like readjusting the star ball or something like that, and then there's just this big scary grin staring you in the face. It's truly unsettling.
So this one it makes me laugh every time. I'm sorry, Eli. So this is one of those objects that you could see with your naked eye in super dark skies. So in what we call level 1 dark skies, the darkest skies that you can get, which we do have in northern Minnesota. So on those nights, you could see that. It would look kind of like a fuzzy, not quite a star. You notice it wasn't a point of light. It would look more like a fuzzy point of light. I don't know how better to describe that. But it looks even better through a telescope. You'll really be able to see some of those stars, and globular clusters are such great things to look at through telescopes because you have so many stars close together that they kind of like sparkle almost like a jewel, and they're just so pretty. So other things that are out in our galaxy are giant clouds of gas. One of those giant clouds of gas, we've kind of already talked giant clouds of gas. We kind of already talked about are the ones that form stars. We call these star-forming regions. And these are truly massive clouds of gas. I mean, like hundreds and hundreds of solar systems form out of these. And the most famous is the Orion Nebula, which is found in the constellation of Orion. So you have his belt, and here is his sword, and this middle light is actually this Orion Nebula. So truly beautiful, but it's up in the winter sky. That one I do remember. And again, this is something that is visible in dark skies with your naked eye. You just have to have those dark enough skies to see it, and you'd see just that little fuzzy patch there in the middle of the sword. But of course, through binoculars or a telescope, you'd see a bit more detail, a bit more, well, detail in the nebula.
Be aware too, for the most part, even if you are able to look at the Orion Nebula through a telescope, you're not going to have the bright colors that you see in the middle image. Astronomers call these things little gray fuzzies in their telescopes.
Yeah, it's definitely
so
more...
you're going to see, cloud structure, but it's going to look a little more gray unless you can have that camera and that camera collecting more light in which you can see more colors.
Yes.
Stars are bright enough that you can see color even without anything, just with
Yes.
your eyes.
And that is a good point, something I forgot to mention, that these pictures I'm showing here are the like really, really enhanced versions.
Yeah, like Hubble telescope are some of them.
Right. But in a little bit, when we look at some of the things that we can see kind of in the summer right now, I will show them as views of how you would see them through a small telescope to give you a more realistic idea of what it would look like. But even with the Orion Nebula, I still say that's one of the best nebulas to look at through a telescope because it is so bright. You can see a lot of that structure. So it still looks interesting through the telescope.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Another type of nebula are what we call planetary nebulas. These have to do with the death of a star, in particular lower mass stars, so stars more like our sun. And so what happens at the end of a low mass star's life is it's going to start to just puff up and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually it's going to get so big that the gravity of the star is going to lose its hold on those outer layers, and those outer layers are just going to kind of float away. And so what you end up being left with after the star has died is the remnant core, the dead core of the star at the center, which we call a white dwarf, and then surrounding it is all of that gas that kind of puffed up and floated away. And while this is still pretty new, it's very hot and glows. Now, the word planetary nebula is a misnomer. These have nothing to do with planets. It came from, they looked like planets through a telescope, but they're not. So it's kind of a weird name that can cause some confusions, but this is a dead star. And this one we can see up in the summer sky. It's actually in the constellation of Lyra in the Harp. And this is the Ring Nebula. This is one that you have to have a telescope to look at. And again, looking at it through a telescope, you're not going to see these vibrant colors, but you will see that ring. It'll look like a fuzzy, almost like a fuzzy Cheerio, I think is how a lot of kids describe it. Which is
like
still,
a fuzzy smoke ring.
Yeah, that's probably better. A fuzzy smoke ring, which is still really cool to look at, and maybe we'll attempt it. What do you think, Eli? Should we attempt to find it this week?
I think we definitely could.
Yeah, that could be fun. Especially if we're using the camera. We'll be able to enhance the settings some. Yeah. All right, the last type of gas cloud that we can find are supernova remnants. So these are what happened to the massive stars, so not our sun. When they die, instead of gently just kind of puffing up and blowing away, they literally explode in a supernova. And what's left behind after that is either the lump of neutrons that's left behind, which is called a neutron star. We've talked about that a couple weeks ago, I think, right? In our Scale and Wonders, I believe we talked about neutron stars. Or you could get a black hole left over. But the rest of the star that's exploded out, of course, is very hot and glows, and that's what our supernova remnant is. Now, this is one of the more famous. This is the Crab Nebula, which is in Taurus, so this is up in the winter. And the reason this one is famous is we actually have records of ancient astronomers who saw the supernova that created the supernova remnant. So there are records from Chinese astronomers back in 1054 that said for a little while there was a guest star, or like a temporary new star in the sky that stuck around for a little bit before fading away. And when you use those maps that they have that showed where in the sky that happened, it lies right on top of where we see the Crab Nebula. So that guest star they saw was the bright light from the supernova, which I think is just so cool that we have a record of when this happened. And again, through a telescope, this is a very enhanced picture. You would see the kind of structure, but you wouldn't see a lot of the colors unless you were using a camera. So let's take a look at, oh, I forgot, galaxies. How did I almost forget galaxies? Galaxies are what we love. I'm ashamed of myself. So the last thing that we can see up in our sky are other galaxies, not just our own Milky Way galaxy. Galaxies come in two main types. What we're seeing here is a spiral galaxy. This is what ours, we think, is. The Milky Way is a spiral galaxy. This one is triangulum, which is up right here next to the Triangulum constellation, which, yes, is literally a triangle in the sky. And so it's right there. But there's another one nearby that we're going to talk about in just a little bit as well. And then the other type of galaxy that we can have are elliptical galaxies. And these are honestly like globular clusters, but galaxy-sized, so hundreds of millions and billions of stars, but in a spherical shape and kind of packed together. So it looks like this one here. This is M87, which is up in the spring as part of Virgo. It's actually part of a cluster of galaxies called the Virgo cluster. And we really, really like M87 because if you remember a few years ago, we had that very first picture of a black hole that came out. That was the supermassive black hole at the center of M87. So it's a pretty awesome one, but you do have to have a telescope for this one. All right, so now we're going to move into some of the things that we will be able to see, and we'll probably try and see this week, depending on what light pollution is looking like. We would definitely try it up, like a chick walk and stuff. So first is probably my favorite globular cluster to look at through a telescope, and this is M13, the Great Globular Cluster of Hercules. And so we have Hercules here. If you're having trouble finding it, we use this kind of crown, Corona Borealis, as a way to find it. And this is pretty easy to see in the sky, is this like backward C shape. But if you connect to it, the stars next to it to kind of make it into a spoon, those stars that you've connected are kind of like the belt of Hercules. And so we can see that M13 sits right here on Hercules. And looking at it through a small telescope, so this would be through a 3-inch telescope, this would be what you would see. And this is what I was talking about, and it's hard to capture in a still picture, but you see just a lot of those stars really close together that really make it kind of shimmer like a shimmering jewel, and it's so pretty, and I love looking at it. And I believe it's one of Lindsay's favorite too. Yeah. So this is one that we would definitely attempt to look at because I love it and I want to. And we're the ones running the telescope. So so up in the same kind of general area, so up in, where are we at? Here we go. In between Cygnus the Swan and Aquila the Eagle, which are two ends of our summer triangle here, we have a planetary nebula called the Dumbbell Nebula. And so this is what it would kind of look like through a 3-inch telescope. And you can see it's got really like an hourglass or a dumbbell shape to it, which is why it's called the Dumbbell Nebula. Then over in the south, And I talked about this, I believe, last week during our August constellation show. In the south in the summer is a really thick patch of our Milky Way galaxy. And that's because that is us looking into the center of our galaxy. And so there are a lot of planetary nebulae, not planetary, a lot of star-forming regions in this area, because this is where those giant gas clouds that form stars live. That's where they're kind of concentrated in the disk of our galaxy. And so there are a few of these, actually a lot of these, that we can see in the south during the summer. A few of those that are really great to look at are the Lagoon Nebula. And so this is kind of what it would look like through a 5-inch telescope. It wouldn't, again, be quite this colorful because our eyes can't pick up that color quite as well as a camera can. So it would be more of a grayish, but again, you'd kind of see that structure. And then right above it is, right up here, is the Trifid Nebula, which is a really cool one to look at because you get this kind of dual color here. With kind of a red and a blue, which again, the color isn't as vibrant to your eyes. Again, the camera just kind of picks up on that a little bit more than your eye would. And then lastly, one of our favorite things to point out in the kind of late summer, early fall, or late summer and fall sky is the Andromeda Galaxy. And the way you can find that is to actually find the big W that's usually, or that's in the north. This is Cassiopeia. And using the right side of that W, if you turn that into an arrow, it'll point you at a little fuzzy blob that you can see with your naked eye in decently dark skies. That little fuzzy blob is an entirely other galaxy, the Andromeda Galaxy. It's the only galaxy that you can see with your naked eye without having to use a telescope. And of course, if you look at it through a telescope, you see a lot more structure to it. It's not just a little fuzzy blob. You can see a lot more of what's going on, see more of that kind of spiral galaxy shape there. So yeah, those are a few of the really cool other things than stars and planets that are up in the sky right now, and some of those things we will try and look at. I know we're going to focus, at least to start, on planets because they are a lot easier to find and easier to see in light-polluted skies, but as it gets darker, I'm going to try and find some other stuff. What about, yeah, because it's fun and I like it. So yeah.
This background picture behind me is actually a picture I took in Duluth. Obviously, mostly you can see the aurora, but also you can see a little fuzzy Andromeda Galaxy right there. So just to kind of give you an idea of the scale of the Andromeda Galaxy. And again, if you are in a dark place, even just in Duluth, you could probably see it.
Will you point to it again? I changed a setting and Zoom disappeared for them real quick. There we go. That's really cool. Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to switch back over to see if we have any questions and what chat's looking like. But yeah. So I'm not seeing any questions. I don't know. Lindsay, what's your all-time favorite thing to look at through a telescope?
I mean, it's really common, M13. And I love showing it to like the public and people who maybe haven't looked through a telescope before, because it really does look like diamonds on like a black canvas. It's my favorite.
So pretty. Yeah, that's up there, and I think the Orion Nebula is up there. I really want to try looking. I know that there is the blinking planetary nebula that's supposed to appear to like blink to your eye, but I've never seen that. It's never done that for me. My eyes also are really bad, so it could just be me. But like, I'm interested in trying to see that one better.
My other favorite is actually a double star, a binary star system.
That's what I was
Called
Yes.
El Vireo. It's at the end of Cygnus the Swan. and there's it depends on who you ask, but there's definitely a blue star there, and then like either red or yellow or orange, depending on the person's eyes. That's my other favorite thing.
Yeah, and I showed this one actually in our constellation show last week. And let me actually, I have Stellarium up, so I can show it to everyone on stream real quick. Once I can find, there we go. So here is Cygnus the Swan, and right at the nose is the star Alberio, which looks like a single star to your eye. But as you zoom in, oops, let me pause time so it stops moving, we see the binary star. And the color isn't super great in Stellarium, but you can kind of tell that there's supposed to be two different colors, but you can really tell it in a telescope. It's an awesome one to look at, and that's definitely something that we can look at this week through our telescopes. Yeah. Awesome. All right, well, that kind of concludes the virtual portion of our Dark Sky Caravan. Starting tomorrow, we will be heading out for our star parties, and let me pull that graphic up for everyone on stream. So we're going to have the rest of the week star parties at different locations. Tomorrow night is going to be here in Duluth. We're going to be outside the Planetarium up at UMD, and we have been told are going to have the parking lot lights turned off. So we'll have even less light pollution than we normally do. Fingers crossed. Yeah, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, I've been working at the Planetarium a cumulative of like 7 years, and we haven't gotten them to do that yet, but really hoping that that will happen this time.
Well, at least this time they actually responded to me and said they were going to try and do it. That's a whole lot further than we've ever gotten in the past. So here's hoping. But since we're going to be at the Planetarium along with the telescope viewing, we're going to do some shows for you guys because we can. So we'll have some planetarium shows going on. We are limited to groups of 13 at a time, just to keep the social distancing within the planetarium. Masks are required at UMD as of last week, and we ask our guests to abide by that. But yeah, we'll be doing planetarium shows, telescope viewing, and a lot of fun stuff. And then Thursday, we'll be at Chattahoochee State Park. And then Friday, we'll be up in Grand Marais. We'll be set up at the North House Folk School. And then our last nights will be up with Emma at Chickwalk. And we'll be set up there. And I believe, Emma, you're going to be doing some stuff that night as well.
You froze. So which night are we
oh,
Friday
sorry.
Night?
Yeah, Saturday night up at Chickwalk.
Saturday night. Yes. Yeah, I'll be on the porch of the museum and telling different stories of constellations that we can find in the night sky. And then our nature center will also be open with a bunch of fun activities. And then we will be projecting our dark sky all sky cam that's located on top of the museum's roof. So,
which if you don't know about yet, yeah, if you don't know about that yet, there is a link down in the video description. Go check that out, because that has been like a year in the making, and we are so excited for it to be live.
Yes, it was very fun. So yeah, we've got a camera up on the museum's roof, and so you'll be able to come inside and see exactly what you can see outside, but also when you go home later that night, you can find out what happened the whole night, and you can find out what happened the next night or any night that you want.
Yeah, we've started getting
what's happening.
Yeah, if you check out the website, there is a link to the YouTube channel for the camera where we post all of the nights, past nights time lapses. And last night we got a couple of really good Perseids in there before the clouds came in, but we got a couple of really good ones. And I'm excited to see what that looks like.
It was a nice night.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the next few nights as the Perseids really ramp up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also curious what it's going to look like when we're there, because we'll be there with like our green laser pointers. I'm really curious what it's gonna look like.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Yeah.
We'll see. All
We'll
right.
see. Yeah, I don't know if they would pick that up, but
I mean, it is a color camera, so
yeah, it might.
we'll see. We might give people false hope that there's aurora. They just see this
Yeah,
green
Aurora.
glow. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, so I guess we will wrap it up. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining us tonight, and for
Of course.
like I said, she'll be up there at Chickwalk on Saturday, joining us up there. Hopefully, everyone can come out to one of our star parties. If not, we're going to try and stream at least one of the telescope viewings, so that anyone who can't make it can kind of see what we're seeing through the telescope. But yeah, thanks everyone for hanging out with us tonight. We hope to see you at one of our star parties. Have a wonderful rest of your night, and we will see everyone next time. Bye, guys.